Which new faces will have the biggest impact for Clemson in 2025? Can the Tigers running back room handle the pressure after losing Phil Mafah? And is Clemson's schedule setting up for a playoff run or a major letdown? We're going to talk about it and break it all down today on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Another episode here on Locked On Clemson. I'm your host, Morgan Thomas, and I'm bringing you daily coverage of the Clemson Tigers. Thanks for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let me give you a little bit of the roadmap for today as we go through it. The Tigers and what new Tigers they are in 2025 and what impact they could make. I've got the state of the running back room and what Clemson will do now that Phil Mafah is gone, much like what they had to do when Will Shipley was gone, but maybe even more question marks now. We'll talk about that, segment number 2. And how many wins? So we'll do the over-under on the total wins. You can see it there on the today's show rundown. We'll do the over-under on the today's or this 2025's wins for the Clemson Tigers and see if I think what I think about it. And you can tell me in the comments as always, and we'll be breaking it down, giving you my thoughts, but it's not just a show about me, it's a show about you as well. So get in the comments, let me know what you think, give me your insights, because I don't know everything, but I can give you my opinion as a Clemson fan. And just to remind you, since this is really my second episode, a lot of you may not know me. I'm a Clemson fan, lifetime Clemson fan. Clemson grad, got a Clemson MBA back in 2018. And so I got my ring, even though it's back there somewhere. And then, and I'm on the Roar. If you ever listen, if you're in the upstate or you're on the app, Clemson's flagship station, 105.5 The Roar, producer, part-time producer, and I have my show during football season. So hopefully you've been a part of some of my shows. If not, welcome in. I'm glad to meet you. And get in the comments. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So check that out at Game Time. All right, now, segment number 1, newcomers who could shake up Clemson's 2025 season. Now, I kind of want to start with the newcomers, the old but new, right? I want to start with them. 2 guys really shocked the college football world because Dabo Swinney went into the transfer portal, something that he wouldn't do, something I didn't think he would do, something that he basically in the fall of 2024 said that it was a recruiting pitch and a recruiting positive that he didn't go into the transfer portal, which I went on the radio and I said, this is wrong. This is wrong. You do not want to position yourself as somebody who is not going to use the portal at all, because that's a benefit of you coming to Clemson, because now you can never use it. Well, thankfully, that was in the past. And, you can change your mind. I can change my mind. And sure enough, Dabo Swinney seems to have, changed his mind, or at least adjusted. And people say Dabo doesn't adjust. Well, this is proof that he does. I already felt like he adjusted, maybe not as fast or in the time frame that you would have liked to have adjusted, but he does make adjustments. I mean, Dabo is one coach. He's 2-time national champion, been there, 4 times? And if there's one thing I know about Dabo, he is not going to sit around and be embarrassed. When he has embarrassing games, he makes moves. He makes changes, and he's doing that. But let's talk about the players here. Tristan Smith, the guy that really shocked the world in college football, big-time transfer addition. Now, Southeast Missouri State, community college guy, Southeast Missouri State guy, wide receiver, real tall, almost 1,000 yards. I'm excited about him. I still have some question marks there. Like, how does he fit in? How much does he get in a rotation? Because, you have Bryant Wesco, who is an up and coming 5-star star that we've already seen, break off some big time catches. We have TJ Moore, who is just also another star in the making that just is going to take over the game as he gets older. So you're excited about those two guys. And then you have guys that you kind of know, and they're not really your outside receivers, but you've got Antonio Williams, that is your slot guy that you really trust. And then you've got Tyler Brown, who unfortunately got injured to the point to where it was a lingering thing and they needed surgery. And then it got to a point where it wasn't going to work out for him to really play much in this past season. And so they kind of held him back. Thankfully, it wasn't, what you see sometimes where people get held back and they're doing it themselves and they just want to leave the university. That wasn't the case. He was actually, trying to nurse his injury and preserve this season for, later on. So maybe we'll see more Tyler Brown, in 2025. And I hope so, because he's definitely a dynamic player that can help the offense. And then you have Cole Turner. He's going to be there as well. And maybe some other guys who could break through. Noble Johnson is no longer there. And then you have Adam Randall, who is a guy who also is no longer in the mix, because he is now possibly going to full-time move over to running back. And we'll talk about that in segment number 2, more about the running backs and my thoughts there. So a lot going on in the wide receiver group that there's still some question marks there. Maybe not the most question marks, but there still is. Then the other guy is Will Helt. He's a transfer from Purdue who was a big game changer, could get to the backfield. If you go back and look at his highlights, he's another super tall guy, really long arm length, and can get to you and wrap you up, chase you down. He's the kind of guy, and I hate to say this negatively towards Cade Denoff, but he's kind of the guy you wish Cade had have turned into, but just kind of hasn't. So now that you've got him in there, I think that's really going to help the defensive line, and it'll help get Peter Woods back into the defensive tackle position. You have Capehart coming back, so I think that'll be good. And then TJ Parker as well. So you have a defensive front that I think is going to be really solid. Adding in there, Sammy Brown's going to be more full-time now going in. And then Tom Allen and what new changes and adjustments he can bring to the team, I think will be really, really good. So you have to be excited about the improvements that Dabo has made on offense and on defense. So those are big areas that you really needed him to do to improve, and he did. Now, he didn't just improve offense and defense through the transfer portal. He's also bringing in 2 guys that a lot of people feel like will be instant impact guys. For what it is, Dabo is not a type of coach that plays freshmen immediately. They usually have to earn their time slowly, and maybe it's more of a process than I would prefer. I'd like to see the best out there immediately. I don't care how young they are. I don't care how many mistakes they make. I want to see the best of the best out there. And I understand that that's maybe not always realistic for your freshmen who do make a lot of mistakes. But you got Amare Adams, a defensive tackle, and I just love everything you see about Amare Adams. The only thing that I don't like about Amare Adams is that he played for South Florence and he beat Westside High School, which is my alma mater, by 1 point in the playoffs this season, in the state championship playoffs. So I'm not really excited to have, about him, but I do love that he's with Clemson. So, definitely no hard feelings there. I'm over it. I've moved on. And really, Westside's kind of led by a Gamecock quarterback. So I can't really be that happy about my own school as well. And then finally, you've got Gideon Davidson, which is the running back, 4-star guy. As a junior was got all these awards and everything. He's just a game-breaking running back. And a lot of people think he's also going to push for a starting position very early. And when you look at pictures of the guy, I mean, he's one of those guys. He kind of reminds me, and I'm not saying this player comparison, but just body build comparison. Tony Stewart, back in the day, remember a linebacker? Maybe you remember him. He was so buff, and he had been in the weight room since probably he was 3 years old. I feel the same way about Gideon Davidson. The dude is just jacked. He, as far as muscle mass and readiness as his body, I think he's there. So it just depends on if he's ready to take on that role, which will be difficult because you got to understand the plays, you got to understand the checkdowns, you got to understand what you need to do in the blocking scheme. So there's a lot going on, and the speed is much faster in the college game than it is what he's used to in high school, even though he was one of the best high school running backs in the country. I do think, though, that the running back position is a really big one that we need to dive in further. So coming next, we'll talk about Clemson's running back room and the potential that they have and some question marks that I have and who is going to step up for Phil Mafah. We'll get into that next. Looking for tickets for your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. So with Game Time, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I really love it because of the seat view feature. It's a game changer. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue, and it really reassures me of what I'm getting is the best value with the best view. And the best part is you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options. It's if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, segment number 2 is something I wanted to talk about with the running back room, because the more I think about the offseason, and I know we have a long way to go. I know what you're telling me. I get it. We have a long way to go. But when I think about the running back room and losing Phil Mafah and then losing Will Shipley the year before and seeing a little bit of the fall off, and then I still have concerns about the offensive line and getting that push that they need to get. It goes back to, can you be a championship team? Can you be a playoff team? Can you be an ACC champion and not really have a very good running game? I have my questions about it. Phil Mafah is gone. Now, he, to the point, when you look back in 2024, he was used so much to the point where he was used possibly too much, because it got to a situation where he got injured and banged up and needed things worked on, surgery, whatnot. And then he couldn't really be a serviceable running back. But then when you look back at when he was dealing with those injuries, a lot of it was like he was the only running back used for that game. Oh, and for the game before. Oh, and for the game before. So I do question CJ Spiller in that sense of why, if you knew that you only had one running back that you trust, really, first of all, why did you only have one running back you trust? Second of all, why did you constantly use Phil Mafah knowing that you're in a position to go into the playoffs or go into a run here? You still had the ability. Now, maybe not everything was in your control. You had to hope for Syracuse to win, which they did. Your destiny wasn't in your hands, but you still had not, it wasn't a long shot. So to me, late season use of Phil Mafah and no one else, I hope that never happens again. Jay Haynes, on the other hand, I mean, this guy is begging for time to the point to where, unfortunately, he's running out kickoffs that he shouldn't be running out, and he tore his ACL doing so. So now he has a major knee surgery that he's not going to be, he's not 100% now. He's not going to be ready in the spring. You have to wait for him to the fall. And how much is he going to be hindered by that? Because I've tore my ACL, my right ACL twice. I used to be a soccer player. I played 1 year as a walk-on soccer player at Anderson University, and then I was in the military. So, but I tore my ACL twice, not even playing soccer, actually playing pickup basketball. But it is not just the physical part of just having to go through the rehab to get yourself back to where the fluid's out of your knee and the flexibility is back, and then the speed is back and your agility is back, but then your mental part of it of trusting your knee. The first time around, I didn't know if I could trust my knee. The second time around, I felt like I could trust my knee. It was just more of a freak accident that caused the re-tear. But I knew I could trust my knee really in the surgery the second time. But the first time, it was like, I don't know. I was a little bit apprehensive. And then you have to worry about the concern of when you put all your weight on your opposite leg while you're at rehab, then straining the other knee and the other joints in the opposite leg. So a lot can happen mentally and physically in rehabbing from your ACL. Now, these guys are top level athletes and have the top level medical staff and nowhere near what anything I had. So they should be able to recover much faster and get back to 100%. But there's still a question mark there. So Phil Mafah's gone. There's no question mark. It's just gone. Jay Haynes is a big question mark. David Eziomume, who I felt like would be a breakout freshman, didn't get a ton of opportunity. And, he's going to need some opportunities next season because I think he's one of those guys as a transfer risk if you don't give him more opportunity. You have Keith Adams Jr. I don't think he's as much of a transfer risk because he's a legacy guy. But to me, when you see him play, you think, man, that guy deserves some opportunity. Hammerhead. I think he deserves some opportunity as well that he really didn't get in 2024. Eziomume also didn't get that. But then you have to add into the mold or the fold here, Adam Randall, former wide receiver, obviously 110% Clemson Tiger. And this is the thing where it's to the point where he's not leaving. He's not a transfer risk. He is, bleeding orange. He loves Dabo. He loves the university. He's the kind of guy that you wish you had more of on your team. My question to him is, can he quickly adapt? And honestly, from what we've seen so far, there's nothing but excitement for Adam Randall as a running back. I, to my core, want to see Adam Randall do great in 2025 as a running back, honestly, because I don't want to put everything on Gideon Davidson as a freshman, just like I warned us to put everything on Wesco and Moore last season. Because one, we know Dabo doesn't really play freshmen early on. So that LSU game, how much we really going to see Gideon Davidson? The LSU game, how much we're going to see him? If anything shows us like against Georgia in 2024, he didn't really use Sammy Brown that much. He didn't use Wesco and Moore until the very end of the game. Very disappointing from a fan perspective because of all the hype around those players. Looking back, I wish he would have had them in there. Maybe they weren't ready, but hey, they're so good and talented. Running back might be one where you could see Easy and maybe Haynes if he's okay. And then maybe Adams and the other guys. But Adam Randall is a guy that I would love to see. If you told me he was the starter, I'm going to be cool with it. I'm going to be excited for it. And I'm going to think he's going to give us 110%, whether it's the best, whether it's better than Davidson, whether it's as good as Phil Mafah, maybe that's too high of expectations for somebody who's just getting into it. And honestly, it's been a while, but I think in high school, I don't think he was a running back either. I think he maybe had some reps at quarterback, which could be a little bit of a threat in the trick game scenario, maybe. But Adam Randall, definitely somebody that I'd like to see fill some gaps there. And then, as we mentioned, Gideon Davidson. So running back room is definitely a big question mark. I don't think the offensive line, even though I do think Matt Luke improved the offensive line, I don't think that their biggest strength was the run blocking. I think they did better in pass blocking than they did run blocking and getting a push ahead of things. It's hard to tell late season because with Phil Mafah, most of the time he was just running straight out of bounds or he was falling down quickly. So it's really hard to tell because he stopped taking on those tacklers like he did at the beginning of the season, like he did the season before when he had a rotation. And that's the thing. There's no real rotation idea right now. So if you have, would you rotate Randall and Davidson maybe? Would you rotate Ezeomume in that? Are you going to have a 4-committee rotation? Is there going to be a solid third down guy? Who knows? Is there a solid fourth down guy? Maybe it's Keith Adams. Who knows? There's a lot of questions. Fans, I don't know if you're nervous. Let me know in the comments. I am kind of a nervous fan. I will be honest. So I'm a little bit nervous about the lack of depth here, proven depth. Now, there are players there, excited for the young talent and the new faces, but there's definitely some question marks there. There's some potential for good and potential for bad. There's just the unknown. And could there be some sort of X factor there? Could Adam Randall be the X factor? I got a lot of questions, as you know, and I don't think I'm going to all get them answered right now. And if you have the answers, please tell me in the comments, because obviously it's still a big question mark for me in 2025. Up next, the way too early win predictions for me for Clemson 2025. Can the Tigers run the table, or are there too many roadblocks? We're going to break it all down. All right, I was looking at sportsbookreview.com and usatoday.com and looking at their win predictions. It looks like USA Today has about 10 wins for Clemson, and sportsbookreview.com has 9.5 wins for Clemson. My question to you in the comments would be, is that an undervalue of Clemson? Is that accurate? It seems like when I look around on the message board, I kind of like the message board, see what you degenerates are talking about. But when you look on X, some of the posts, some of the other websites out there that write about Clemson, it does seem like, they're concerned about the schedule. So let's go through the schedule real quick. And I know I kind of went through some of the big ones to circle in yesterday's episode. If you haven't watched yesterday's episode, I'm not a beggar, okay? I don't beg, but please watch yesterday's episode, all right? Watch all week. Get me hyped up for this week and next week, because, hey, this is my new gig here. I'm here for you. I'm going to be here for you for the long haul. So I'm not a beggar, but I'm not opposed to begging if you make me. So the Clemson 2025 schedule, August 30th to November 29th. I'm going to run through it quick. Versus LSU. Yeah, you're right. That's at home. That's not a neutral site. Versus LSU. Versus Troy. At Georgia Tech. Versus Syracuse. And then you have an open date the end of September. So 4 games before you have a bye week. LSU, Troy, Georgia Tech, Syracuse. I can see where that would be a difficult, thing to predict this early on. LSU, obviously, with it being the home opener, the season opener, going to be a little bit of a concern there. An SEC team, blah, blah, blah. I get it. Troy, not as a concern. But Troy historically has been a tough out. Georgia Tech, also one of those things that's a big concern, because Georgia Tech is one of those teams that they don't go down without a fight. And that's going to be at their house in Atlanta. So I understand where there's concern there. Now, Syracuse, you don't get Syracuse in the Carrier Dome, which is, I think, a good thing considering his history and past. You get Syracuse at home, which Clemson does much better with. But Fran Brown's going to be maybe wanting to collect on some of his thank you, sir, pat on the back, going to the ACC. He might be wanting to come to Clemson and collect on that gift that he was given, or that he gave to Clemson and to Dabo Swinney. I know that's all jokes aside there, but you got to think Fran Brown's going to come to Clemson September 20th, and he's going to want to collect a little bit. And Clemson does not get Bill Belichick at home, unfortunately, but they travel at North Carolina after the open date, October 4th. I'm not too concerned about Bill Belichick right now. Time will tell, though, how well the NFL, the pro model, will work. If anything, you got to say, and I think you probably agree with me, the pro model is kind of where college football is going right now. So, unfortunately, that's what we're looking at. Maybe they do improve because of that. So we have at North Carolina, at Boston College, and then versus SMU. So I'm not super concerned. North Carolina, Boston College, those 2 away games, but they are away games. SMU, that might be one of those ones where they're frustrated and want a rematch from the ACC championship game. So you could circle that one as well. And then there's another open date. Oh, gotta hate that. 2 open dates, man. One in the end of September, one at the end of October. So you get a little bit of wet the beak, and then you got to go on a break going into November, where you play 5 games in November. Crazy enough. And so every game every weekend of November versus Duke, I think, you got to think that's got to be a little bit of a tough game. Florida State, as I mentioned in yesterday's episode, will be a difficult one because they're completely revamping again, which that's kind of their thing right now. At Louisville, they're going to want to kind of continue their winning ways. And that could be another trap game because Clemson after that goes to or hosts Furman, their final home game of the season, and then they got to go to South Carolina, which they have been dominating there in recent years. But Lenore Sellers wants to say, don't forget about me. So definitely some concerns there. Win-loss total, I can see where there's some people that say, hey, this is definitely a 2-loss schedule. I think your 2 losses, maybe people are saying South Carolina, LSU. If you said a 3-loss schedule, maybe there's a hiccup there at Louisville, Florida State, somewhere maybe. I can honestly see where people are saying, hey, be careful. Might not be a for sure undefeated season. Might not be a for sure 10-win season, regular season 10-win season. It could be a 9.5. Sportsbookreview.com might be good. Now, USA Today says 10 plus. Repeating as ACC champion, hard to say. I don't want to go that far too soon because I don't want to jinx anything. But I think it will be a schedule that Clemson will have to navigate and stay healthy and be able to adjust as they go and avoid those concerns in each segment. I think as Dabo probably does, he just does it one game at a time. The players probably just do one game at a time. But even for me as a fan, I'm just thinking little segments at a time. Like I take with baseball, softball, basketball, just little weekends at a time. In football, obviously not weekends. Maybe I just do months at a time or 2 weeks at a time or in between the bye weeks. When this went up to this bye week and went up to the next bye week and just kind of go from there. But each portion of Clemson, there's not one that I say would guarantee that Clemson has going to sweep the slate there. So let me know what you think when you look at the schedule, how difficult you think it may be. All right, so that wraps up my discussion on the impact players, the state of the running back room, and the over-under wins for Clemson. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk some more about Cade Klubnik and how he stacks up against the other quarterbacks because, I like to do on the radio, I like to do the Elite QB Challenge with Mickey Plyler. So I'm going to talk about Cade Klubnik, who I actually did pick this year twice. And he really didn't do that well for me, but I did pick him twice. Just want to let you know. So how he stacks up against other quarterbacks and what he needs to do to get himself to that elite level, that Heisman Trophy candidate level, maybe. And whether or not 2025 is the schedule or, is a season where he can do that. Make sure you follow me over on X. You see it down there at the Morgan T Show for more Clemson updates, and you can chat with me throughout the week over there. I'm always on X, throughout the week. So subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on all of my exclusive content that I put here on Locked On Clemson every single week. And, as always, Tiger fans, don't forget, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. But for your second listen of the day, check out Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono, Kenton Gibbs bring you everything you need to know about the conference, including where Clemson stands into 2025. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. You see the icon there on the side. Go look for that and check those guys out. And hopefully I'm going to, stump for myself there. Maybe I'll get back on one of those squad shows and represent Clemson. I've already had people on X tell me, you got to get on the squad shows. And I'm telling you, it's in the works. I'm going to get on the squad shows and represent Clemson because we definitely need a voice as the the powerhouse of the ACC, as you know. But again, thank you so much for tuning into this episode and the rest of the episodes. Don't forget to follow and subscribe again. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.